Recently, I had a young man reach out to me with a fantastic question, and after getting his permission, I want to share it along with my answer with all of you. Hopefully, it'll give you some insight into how today's men think and feel, especially the younger ones. First, let's get to his question, where he said, "Hi, Dan. I'm 23 years old and about a year out of college and working on my dream job. I have a pretty good life all in all, but I have to admit, it sucks not having someone to share it with. I've always been a bit of a loner and never really had many friends, and it gets tough sometimes, especially on the weekends. I enjoy gaming and spend most of my free time doing that, but worry that it's becoming my entire life. I've tried talking to others about it, but they just don't seem to get it. They can't understand me and the way I feel. Could you do a video talking about it and maybe help people to understand?" Well, my friend, yes, I can, and I want to state right up front, I hear you, and can tell you straight up, you aren't the only one who's dealing with what you're going through. In fact, I think today it's the norm for many young men, and to their credit, many of them want to do something about it, but either don't know how or run into walls, especially with others who just can't understand why they, and I'd argue most men, feel the way they do these days. And I've covered it before, but today I'm going to really dive into it. Dive into the question of why do so many men feel alone and misunderstood. Now let's get started by saying that we men are taught from a very early age to hide our true selves. That we shouldn't express our emotions or feelings, but bury them. Bury them deep. This in turn tends to make us invisible or at least feel like we are. It's why I tell men all the time that if you've ever felt like no one truly sees you or what you're going through, you aren't alone. In fact, you aren't the exception, but the norm. I've dealt with it, and I'd venture to say that pretty much every man has or will at some point in his life. And while I'll be the first to admit that men are better suited to isolation and being on their own, much better in fact than women, to say it doesn't affect men would be foolish. Men across the world experience loneliness and isolation every single day, not to mention the sense that their struggles aren't being taken seriously. And whether you're a man or a woman, as a human being, it isn't in our DNA to be alone. While we may struggle in different ways and to different levels, we are a social species and do best when surrounded by others. That is a fact, though many don't want to acknowledge it. And while men can certainly adapt and handle being alone better, to say it doesn't cause them issues would be ignoring reality, which I'd argue is exactly what's going on right now and has been for a number of years. We are, as a society, ignoring the fact that men are withdrawing in ever-increasing numbers. And it begs the question, why? Why is this happening? And more importantly, what can be done about it? Well, let's answer that, shall we? Now, I've come up with 10 key reasons why I think men often feel isolated and alone, some of which are self-inflicted to be sure, but all of which I'd say in some way are societal in nature. To put it bluntly, men's loneliness isn't just about not having people around. It's deeper, much deeper than that. It comes from how society treats men, how it views them, how it tells them to act, and how it tells them that they aren't wanted, aren't needed, and aren't worthy, that they are in fact disposable. And perhaps most important of all, society pressures them to just sit and take it, to keep their struggles to themselves, even going so far as to openly mock men for even having issues. I ask you, how often do you hear today's women getting gleeful, literally jumping for joy when they point out that men are feeling isolated and alone, that there's a loneliness epidemic among men? Many of these women wear it as a badge of honor, something to be proud of, which should tell you how little respect or caring they actually have for men. And that leads me to the first reason why men struggle, which is a lack of emotional expression. From a young age, many men are taught to just toughen up, not show any emotions, and that they'll be mocked and made fun of if they do. It makes them, in a nutshell, unmanly to show any emotions. The result? They end up bottling up their feelings, making it harder to connect with others on a deeper level. Next is that men tend to only have what I call surface level friendships. Unlike women who will crack open multiple bottles of wine and unload every thought, feeling, and emotion they have on their besties, or even these days to perfect strangers on the internet, men's friendships tend to revolve around shared experiences and activities. Things like sports or gaming or work. And while those are great, they don't always lend themselves to being able to open up to one another about the issues and personal struggles that they might be facing. Which then becomes a symptom of number 3, which is that men face never-ending societal pressure to be independent. Men are taught again from a young age that they're expected to be self-sufficient and not rely on others for anything, most especially emotional support. Men from the day they are born are told and conditioned to be providers, that they are to give, and never take. So when a man is struggling, the message that is sent to him is crystal clear. Figure it out on your own, buddy, which leads men to feeling isolated, or as one vet recently said to me, feeling like you're stranded on a deserted island where not only is there no one there to rescue you, but no one is even looking, not even other men. Next is the fear of judgment, something that is very real and very legitimate. Many men don't just worry that if they open up, they'll be seen as weak or incapable. They know it's going to happen. How? Because they've all experienced it time and time again. From the time they're little boys and told, boys don't cry or just rub some dirt on it, all the way up to adulthood where they'll literally be laughed at for having even the slightest issue or problem. It's that lived experience that every man goes through that creates the fear of being mocked or dismissed if they open up, often by the very people that claim to love them, which in turn makes them even more likely to remain silent. Next is the never-ending pressure to succeed, that they are defined as men by their work and their responsibilities. Men are told they must always be seeking more. Nothing is ever good enough. That no amount of success that they might achieve should stop them from achieving even more. It's a relentless, never-ending life experience for men, where career pressures, financial burdens, and family obligations often and usually do take priority over friendships and social life. In fact, must take priority. Thus, over time, it creates a silo effect for men where they focus solely on their job or career and thus create a deep sense of isolation. And because they do that, and frankly are expected to, it then leads to the next thing, which is relationship struggles. How many times have you heard a woman say, I wish he were around more. I wish he wasn't always at work. Of course, they say that while at the very same time having the expectation that he better be bringing home enough bacon to ensure she's able to live in whatever lifestyle she thinks she should, no matter how outrageous or ridiculous her expectations might be. The fact is, the number one trigger of divorce, by a wide margin, is the husband losing his job. And that holds true even when it's through no fault of his own. It reinforces the belief that men exist solely to provide, which makes breakups, divorce, or even just difficulty finding a partner so much more difficult for many men. He is told he's a failure because he couldn't take care of his family properly, couldn't provide. And when they are down, when these men are hurting most, the person that they think should be there to support them, who actually made a vow to stand by in sickness and in health, more often than not, turns their back on him and tosses him aside. And we wonder why men feel that relationships and marriage have no benefit to them anymore. It, as much as anything, is what's causing men to struggle with their mental health. And then they have to face the reality of just that, the mental health stigma against men. As we've pointed out many times, men struggling with depression, anxiety, or loneliness are often discouraged from seeking help, told to just man up. It's the default response they get from almost everyone, which only makes things worse. Add to it that while homelessness, drug addiction, and unaliving all affect men in significantly higher numbers than women, the preponderance of the funding and help is directed not towards the men, but to the women. In fact, it's not uncommon that those who try to address that discrepancy are often told to sit down and shut up, lest they take away from funding or awareness of the struggles that women face. Men, on the other hand, well, no one wants to hear about that. Next, there's the lack of community for men, something that often increases as men get older. Friendships often fade, and many don't have a strong sense of community. The places where men could gather and be with one another, to have safe spaces, if you will, have all largely been taken away. While society has no problem, in fact, demands that there be women-only places, men-only ones, well, they're labeled as misogynistic or sexist. Thus, fewer men are involved in things like clubs, religious groups, or local organizations, all places that used to provide men with connections. On top of that, there's the social media illusion. Anyone who says that social media in general, and the companies whose platform it runs on, aren't female-centric is a fool. Women are largely allowed to say and do anything, up to and including posting things like attacks on men and even performing violent acts against them, some of which I've highlighted on my channel. Men, on the other hand, are silenced and even have their accounts taken down for the most innocuous of things. While women saying and doing anything is portrayed as them being strong and independent, of speaking in their own voice, men speaking up is labeled as hate speech, and worse. It, along with Hollywood, the news, and society in general, has created an illusion that comes down to what is one sentence: women good, men bad. And along those same lines, it's created the final point, which is unrealistic masculinity standards. Today's culture often paints an image of the ideal man, the one who meets all the sixes, the one who is strong, independent, never vulnerable, while at the very same time vilifying the man if he has those qualities. It's a no-win scenario for men, and they know it. No one is perfect or can be. Real life doesn't work that way, and chasing that ideal or even putting him down for reaching it leaves men confused and feeling even more disconnected. They are either Prince Charming or Homer Simpson, but either way, it's still not good enough. Which leads me to, what can men do? How can they overcome all of this? Well, gentlemen, it starts by knowing this: you're not broken, you're not weak, and you're most definitely not alone. You are a man, a human being, and entitled to the very same concern, caring, and respect as any other human being. You are worthy, period. And anyone who tells you you aren't, well, those are the ones who are actually unworthy. And here's 3 things you can do if you're feeling lonely and not sure what to do. First, find like-minded men. And yes, you're going to have to put yourself out there, which I know can be tough, but it's on you to do it. No one's going to do it for you. Join a local or online community focused on your interests, whether it's a hobby, a fitness group, or a support network. Real connections start with shared purpose. Next, prioritize having real conversations. Now look, you don't need to crack open a bottle of wine and spend the next 12 hours spewing emotions like lava from a volcano. But the next time you're with a buddy, instead of just talking about sports or work, try opening up a little bit. Let him know about something you're struggling with. You don't have to spill everything. Even small steps can deepen friendships. Hell, what you're going to find is more likely than not, he's struggling with the very same thing you are, which then means you'll be able to bond and support one another. It's something I've had happen to me I don't know how many times. I've made terrific friendships that way. Next, you need to prioritize and take care of yourself. Physical, emotional, and mental health are all connected. I like to think of them as a 3-legged stool, and without all 3, that stool is going to fall over. So get your ass up off the couch and go exercise. Hit the gym, get outside. Do things that bring you joy and bring you peace. There is no right or wrong. There is only do or do not. The bottom line, as I've taught people I've worked with for 40 years now, is that a strong mind and body make all the difference in the world. It all ends up feeding upon itself and growing. And it doesn't just happen. You have to make it happen. The truth is, more and more men are finding peace in solitude, and there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I'd say it's beneficial in many ways. Being alone doesn't have to mean being lonely. Many men are using their time alone to focus on things like self-improvement, developing new skills, and living life on their own terms. So if you feel isolated, don't see it as a dead end. It might just be the start of something powerful. You have more control over your life and happiness than you might think. And remember, you're not alone in this journey. There are literally millions upon millions of men just like you. So go find them. Be the one who takes control of your life and sets the example. Because, and again, I say this from experience, not only will you end up helping others, but the reality is, it's you who will be helped the most. And it all starts with you, my friends. Go forth and become the kings you are, that you deserve to be. And if this video resonated with you, share it with others. Help other men by spreading the word. And let me know your thoughts in the comments. Let's have a conversation and build something meaningful together. And finally, become part of the Men Need to Be Heard community, a community of men and for men, by hitting that like button and subscribing. And don't forget to ring the notification bell so you'll be notified when I release more content like this. All right, that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.